This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development by a group of guys with one thing in common. We love Drupal. Recorded live on Wednesday afternoons in a Google Hangout. Visit us at talkingdrupal.com. This is episode 53, June 11th, 2014, the DrupalCon Recap.
Whew, here we are, back again.
Gosh, my arms are tired.
So here we are, and Nick and I are still right where we were, and John and Jason are back from Austin. And I don't see any significant suntans on anyone's faces.
No,
John's not wearing his cowboy hat.
No chance of sunstroke on this trip.
So John Picozzi from Oomph, welcome back to New England. How was your trip to Austin?
Your first DrupalCon.
It was an experience. It was great. I enjoyed the city of Austin as much as I got to see of it, and it was just it was a week full of meeting new people, great information, and pretty insane after parties. So all around, it was a good trip.
That's great. And you were blogging on Oomph's website, right?
Yep, I was doing daily recaps about the day's events, and those are on the blog at oomphinc.com/blog.
Great. And your roommate for the week. So we joked about this last time on who was on the right side or the left side of the bed, and we actually learned that Jason had a much better hotel than John. So, Jason, welcome back.
Thank you. It was just the lucky find on Orbitz for me. I had a little bit longer walk from the conference center, but I mean, honestly, it was all within like 4 blocks, so it was really pretty easy to get around to stuff.
So it had nothing to do with your speaking throughout conferences in the world and a book that's being published. It just had everything to do with getting online quicker than John did.
It was way later, actually.
It was procrastination and paying off.
Okay.
It doesn't happen often, but in Jason's case, it worked out for him.
Yeah. I lucked out, and the Driscoll is a very cool little hotel. Really old. It's been around for a long time. It's just amazing architecture in there. It's huge vaulted ceiling in the lobby and like great big ceilings and stuff. So it was a lot of fun. And side note, the lamps in the bar were made out of old pistols, which was awesome. Very Texas.
Cool. You know what? I didn't see pictures of that on your Instagram. Did you take them?
I posted a few, not a ton. I should post a few more because it's just such a cool place.
Yeah, I look forward to Austin is one of the cities I've never been to. Looking forward to go there someday.
I'm not sure I ever really want to go there during South by Southwest.
Really?
I've just heard that it's a complete mob scene.
Right.
And it's just constantly waiting in line to get into things. And I mean, of note, there were 3,400 people there for DrupalCon, which was awesome. And it meant that basically you could go anywhere in Austin and run into other people that are Drupal people. But it was not so overloaded that like you couldn't get in anywhere.
Subsequently, towards the end of the week, it got a little bit busier because the X Games were actually starting as well. So,
true. Yeah.
I don't know how it was on Friday. I flew out Friday morning, early Friday morning, but Thursday night into Friday, and I imagine Friday night you probably things got a little bit busier there.
Oh, it started a little bit on Wednesday night. Lullabot had a party at this place called Handlebar, and they had like this rooftop bar area and stuff. It was really cool. But we had, towards the end of the evening, you started to see this crossover of all these people coming in for X Games amidst all of the nerds there for DrupalCon, and you could really tell. There's a very big difference in clientele. It was pretty funny.
So, the X Games still exist? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I thought that was a cool little parallel. They started right here in Rhode Island, and there they were going on. Tony Hawk was doing a big skate demo thing in front of their state house and stuff, so it's pretty wild.
They already peaked, though, didn't they? Didn't the X Games already peak when Drupal hasn't peaked yet?
Yeah, they're coming down a little bit. We're still going up,
That's right.
But it is still going up. This was
opposite sides of the mountain.
This was the highest attendance of any DrupalCon yet.
Makes sense.
That's like 34, over 3,400 people, like 3,443 or something like that.
And I think 20% of those people were actually of the female persuasion. Am I correct on that, Jason?
You are, and so that I know we already talked a lot about the keynotes last week, but in the
hey, you know
wrap
what, Jason? Before we get into that, and while we're talking about female persuasion,
oh man,
let's finish our introduction. And Nick from Enlightened Design. Nick, no insult implied there whatsoever. I just needed some way to get these guys off track and bring them into the conversation.
Okay, well, I'm definitely male. Did I get that out there? But I'm looking forward to hear, the end of week recap, I suppose, after they've had a chance to digest. I don't know if you guys know this, but President Obama is in Worcester today.
Yeah, I saw that.
He's coming to speak at the graduation of Worcester Tech. He wanted to go out to lunch with me, but I told him I had to do Talking Drupal. So
he might be stopping by?
Yeah, he might be stopping by to say hi.
If he can't make it, I'd prefer to have Sally join us. Is Sally around today or what?
No, I put her in the bedroom so she couldn't. So Sally, I suppose she's the female persuasion of the company. Get a pet parrot about a week and a half ago.
That's awesome.
And, she likes to chime in on meetings, so I put her in the other room.
Have you taught her how to
I've had 3 meetings with Sally just this week. It's been very enlightening.
She's a new mascot.
I think you just have to teach her to say WordPress sucks.
She doesn't talk too much. She'll say hello, pretty girl, but she's a bit older, so she's 38.
Wow.
She doesn't talk too much anymore. But when she was younger, she used to. So, but I am going to go watch the motorcade because I found out. I didn't know that he was coming until yesterday. I mean, I wasn't paying attention to the news, but I found out that, there's been Apache helicopters and a bunch of stuff flying over my house for a week and a half, and I had no idea why. And I found out that the motorcade is about 2 blocks from my house. So I'm probably going to go take a walk and stalk the president. Although I probably shouldn't say that on the air beforehand.
You should definitely do that. Yeah.
Don't worry. The NSA has already flagged it.
Yeah, so we'll see. I don't know how close I can get. I'm kind of worried about my wife getting home because pretty much every route to our house goes right through, and they're going to shut it down all day.
It's not every day the President of the United States rolls through Worcester, Massachusetts, so you should take that opportunity to go take a look.
Yeah. So bring my laptop. They'll think it's something suspicious probably. And you'll see a news article. Some guy in a Drupal shirt was tackled by the Secret Service.
So let's move on to our topic. So this show 53 is a DrupalCon Recap, which we started to launch into a few minutes ago. And Jason and John were lucky enough to be there last week and wanted to share some of the highlights and maybe a couple of the lowlights from the week. So let's talk about first the keynotes. We mentioned these a little bit in episode 52, so you could go back and sort of get some detailed information. But let's summarize. How were the keynotes for the week? I think there were 3, and maybe 2 that we want to highlight, right?
Yeah. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. It's always cool to hear Dries talk about where Drupal is now and where he sees it heading and where he sees the industry heading, because he's a really smart guy. He's really a student of our industry, and that really shows. And I don't remember what year it was that I went to. DrupalCon San Francisco was the first one that I went to, and sort of seeing the arc of where he sees Drupal, and also seeing the change in stats and usage and stuff has been pretty fascinating. And so, I mean, I think looking at Drupal in that perspective, in the whole industry and where it's all headed, and how Drupal fits with that, actually gives you a much better understanding of why they've taken the focus they have with Drupal 8, with not only the authoring experience, but the interchange experience. How do you get content in and out of Drupal and interact with all these other systems that are developing? And it all makes a lot more sense when you look at it that way.
One of the things that always just impresses me, or I enjoy about listening to him speak, is that it feels like it's one of us speaking. Like a lot of times when you hear a CEO speak from a company, they feel like they're someone different, and it's sort of a different level and coming from a different perspective. But someone like him, I feel like it's like one of the guys that could be on this phone call that is and has actually he has been on this phone call. But you know what I mean? It feels like someone that you can relate to is talking
Right.
about things that you really care about, and it's a little bit different perspective.
Yeah, Steve.
So listening to him is really fun to do.
It's definitely the vibe that he portrays and exceeds at. You actually, all throughout the con, not even just the keynote, but you got that feeling as you were passing him in the hallway and he was taking selfies with adoring fans and as he's attending sessions. He even promised in his keynote that he would buy ice cream, and Jason, I think, it was the benefactor of that, because I think on Friday he actually did buy everybody ice cream. So I think I think you're absolutely right. I think his love for Drupal and his love for the community really shines through, not only in his keynote, but how he carries himself through these conferences.
John, I need to stop you there and ask you something. So when we spoke last week, you talked about the Dries buying ice cream was based on the 14 open issues for Drupal 8 getting completed. Did he buy ice cream because he loved everyone, or because those 14 items were closed on Friday?
I'm gonna have to defer to Jason on this one, but I think it's probably the love ice cream, not the bug ice cream.
Okay.
Well, there were a number of issues that got closed out. It was really incredible, and I want to actually give the Code Sprint Day, a proper going over. There were other bugs that were created or were logged that day, so many of those 14 actually did get closed out, which was pretty amazing. But yeah, somewhere around, I don't know, maybe like 2 o'clock or so, there were a few coolers that got rolled out with a lot of ice cream bars. They went really quickly.
Hey, listen, we all know how to close out bugs, man. When you have to close out a bug, we all know how to do that. So yep. Sometimes the quality of how those bugs are closed may not always be relevant, especially when there's like things like ice cream on the line. So it's kind of funny to hear that. Because many a days when I've had a deadline, I've closed bugs out.
Well, okay, so
do you also buy yourself ice cream?
I'll come back to the Code Sprint thing, but just suffice it to say that I was blown away by the number of people and the range of abilities who were there on Friday to contribute. It was awesome and awe-inspiring. It was fantastic. So that's all I want to say about that for now. But it's going to be worth a deeper dive.
So we started to talk about the keynotes. So we had Dries on the first keynote day.
Yep.
Following up to that was Erin.
Erin Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
And I think John and I both came away from that one pretty blown away. I mean, this is someone who, like, no matter what gender, ethnicity, has just an unbelievable resume. I mean, has done incredible things, and in an industry where it's frankly has been tough for women to be at the top end of it. She has been at the top end of it for many years, for many large companies, including AOL and now Time. So she's the senior VP of engineering, I think. I hope I'm not getting that wrong, but
Senior Vice President of Strategic Mobile Development.
Okay, thank you. But her intelligence and her eloquence in talking about both engineering challenges and diversity ones equally well was pretty amazing. And that kind of engineering bent that she brought to her talk, the amount of data that she was presenting was remarkable. And it shows that Drupal really is one of the most diverse and, I think, progressive open source communities in terms of gender and ethnicity, in participation in conferences, in speakers. I mean, obviously there's still work to do, but about, I think, almost 50% above average for the industry in terms of attendance by women and speakers who are women. So not bad.
There was a woman at the Boston meetup yesterday. She mentioned she actually wasn't able to make that keynote, but she mentioned that 4 people after the keynote came up to her and apologized out of the blue. And she was a bit confused because she hadn't been to the keynote and didn't know what they were apologizing for. And then when she found out, it was like, oh, okay, well, I'm here.
It was interesting. It was prompted by Google releasing a bunch of stats about their workforce. But what I later learned was that the 30% women at Google is including all employees, not just engineering staff.
Right.
So that's office staff, administrative staff, everything. So it's maybe not quite as sort of accurate to like what people are really trying to focus on, which is participation in the active part of our industry, not just the peripheral stuff of running a company.
Well,
not
Google
to say
does.
it's less important, but
Google breaks it down, so you can see the technical portion as well as HR.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's where you see the difference.
Yeah.
And it's it's not to take anything away from Google, because they're still by far better than the industry. I mean, that's nearly double the industry average.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think it just underscores that even throughout the conference, there were challenges that you'd see things come up on Twitter, people saying things to each other that got a really negative reaction from other people at the conference, and it did cause some issues. My friend Morton DK, which a lot of people are familiar with from his Angry Themer talks, he's Danish. He doesn't necessarily think about what words really mean what in the way he talks, and he's always, brusque. And he really, he kind of stepped in it, and he had to really kind of sit back and say, okay, those are words I shouldn't use, and I need to stop, and I need to just say I'm sorry and let it go. And he did, and it was fine, but it just really kind of makes us all think a little bit more about things that you casually say that may not raise eyebrows if you're with a few other guys, but when you're in an arena of 3,400 people and you're really trying to make it a more accessible and accommodating place, that it can really ring a lot louder than you thought. It's a tough lesson.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that, but also to that point, and I'm not going to disagree with you at all. I do think that the one person that was riding Morton pretty hard was male, and that I didn't really see an outcry from the female portion of the community as much as this one person was kind of perceiving it to be.
I don't know enough of the background and who was involved to really get into it, but I think just the fact that it happened,
Sure.
it just reminds us that we need to think more. But anyway, that's enough of that.
So there was a third keynote during the week.
There There
Apparently.
was.
Well, 4. Were there 4?
And one thing I'd like to bring up is that if you look at the group photo, if you find the group photo on online somewhere, you'll notice that the room is full of chairs, and that's because it's the first keynote. It's Drese's keynote. As an attendee, you'll actually find that the amount of chairs in the room gets progressively smaller as each day happens, and that makes sense, I guess. I would say that the first 2 keynotes were amazing and well worth watching. Unfortunately, I felt, and I think Jason kind of feels this way too. We were kind of underwhelmed by the 3rd keynote. He had a great intro. Yeah, but what I found the greatest takeaway was actually the intro that Josh Mitchell gave for the keynote speaker. And Josh is actually the CTO of the Drupal Association. I think he took the job last month, so he's pretty new at the job. Don't quote me on that though. I maybe short him a couple of months.
It was pretty recent.
It's this year, certainly.
Definitely this year. But he had some impressive stats, like Drupal.org does 20 terabytes of data per month. Like that to me, I was like, that's a crazy amount of data. But he also said that there were improvements coming to Drupal.org, and I think a lot of us in the community have interacted with Drupal.org at some point, obviously, and we have a lot of gripes on how it operates. And he reassured everybody that there were improvements coming and there were improvements that were made. Some of those improvements include a job board. They're going to be adding Drupal jobs to Drupal.org as kind of a marketplace for people to find Drupal-specific jobs, which I thought was very cool.
Well, yeah, because they're scattered around in the groups now, and I see the notifications all the time, but having a central place for that, I think, would be huge to show people what kind of a volume there is for demand.
Definitely. He also said that his team, they are on a path right now to hire dedicated Drupal.org staff, so people that are specifically going to be geared up on working on Drupal.org and making those improvements, which I thought was nice. And one of the last things that he brought up was that they just recently launched a Drupal 8 landing page, so you can get all of your Drupal 8 information kind of in one place. Up until that point, it was kind of hard to figure out where to kind of get started with Drupal 8.
Yeah, it's true.
So the landing page, I think, is actually a big plus in kind of getting that information out there.
They also, it's actually kind of funny because in the chat I was just lamenting how difficult it is to find information about Drupal 8. So I actually was looking at that as pretty useful. But they also just released, finally, clean URLs for users. So you can go to drupal.org/u/the username. You do, if you have an existing account though, you do have to log in, hit edit, and save your account first.
Yep, and it also shows user pictures now too, which is kind of
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Is this what Danny was involved in? I saw a post from her.
That's a piece of it, but I wanted to actually bring that up as one of the improvements. She's started prototype. Danny Norton from Boston has started prototyping an overhaul to the user account pages themselves, which I think will be fantastic. She's got a great prototype there, soliciting some feedback. I'll see if we can find a link to that and add it to the show notes, but she's doing some great work there.
Yeah, she's really talented at UX too.
Yeah, then that's, I'm going to talk about that as well with the Code Sprint, because that's what I spent most of my time with, was something related to theming and UX that was really pretty exciting.
All right, let's move on. So we got our highlights from the keynotes. Day 1 and day 2 were good. The intro for day 3 was awesome. We heard some.
And to be fair, Hugh Forrest was a pretty impressive guy to have on the third day. I don't want to shortchange him. He's the director of South by Southwest Interactive, and related some amazing stats and information about the growth of that festival, and really kind of that sort of analogy of where geeks fit in popular culture when you look at a film festival, a music festival, and an interactive festival together in their growth path, but just not the best presenter. And that's really where I think people felt a little let down. It's not that he didn't have some interesting things to say. It's just the way he went about doing it was maybe certainly less impressive than the days before.
It's always tough to follow some people that are icons in the community sometimes too.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And honestly, you know, that's not his job to be up presenting about this stuff. It's his job to run a festival, and he runs a festival that is now bigger than both music and film combined.
Sorry, Jason, I disagree. If you're brought in, I don't want to say hired, but if you're brought in to do a keynote, that is your job that day.
Yes. Oh no, fair enough. I
Okay.
meant on a regular basis.
Right. Because I know Drees's and Erin's job is not to do keynotes on an everyday basis either. So.
Sure, fair enough. But they do that a lot more.
Maybe. So let's move on to the sessions. So we've got a list of them. So Jason and John were there for a few days, and we've got a little bit of time here to sort of pick on the things that you guys found most interesting that day. So John, why don't you go first in picking one that you just want to take a few minutes and talk about, and point people to the direction where they can watch this, because I think everyone can watch these online.
Yeah, so let me start off by saying all of the presentations are and the keynotes are on the DrupalCon Austin website, or on YouTube. If you type in DrupalCon Austin, you'll get a bunch of YouTube videos. So you can find all of these talks online there. Watch them, especially the ones that we're mentioning, because we thought they were pretty cool. If you think the topic's good, you know, you can watch them yourself. The first talk that I went to that I thought was actually really, really awesome was a Semantic Site Architecture talk by Jody Hamilton. And she is actually, I believe, the CTO of
ZivTech.
ZivTech, that's it. And she was talking about architecting your site and ways to make your site architecture make sense and to keep things kind of neat and tidy. One thing that she did share was Palantir's site architecture plan, and she recommended making a plan. So basically what this plan is it's a spreadsheet with different tabs and different columns in it. And the one that she actually shared with us was awesome template for everything from content types to taxonomy, and coming up with the structure for those items before actually getting into Drupal and creating them. We'll be sure to add the link for that into the show notes so everybody can access it.
John, how do you see that would help your process today to implement this architecture? It sounds like it's a documentation process.
Yes, it's more than that.
Yeah, so it's basically getting everybody on the same page and creating the structure for your content types. So how I see it helping, really,
John, from a sorry to interrupt you again, but from a customer getting on the same page, or on the technical side of this?
No, I can see it being beneficial to both sides, but I think
Absolutely.
It's more beneficial to the development team to be able to say, what fields are we going to reuse in certain content types? Okay, well, I have this image field, and I have 6 content types that need images. Can I reuse this field for those content types? Yes, no, why? Why can I reuse it? Why can't I reuse it?
Well, and I think it goes beyond that too. I mean, the semantic aspect of it, I think, is equally applicable on both ends. So, when she talks about like all the different content types, you've got fields and you've got content types. It's how do you name that content type? Where does it go on the website? How do you structure the URLs for content that is of that content type? So how do you structure URLs for blog posts, for press releases, for all these different things. So not only does it make sense to users to see /blog, okay, I understand from that URL what kind of content I'm looking at. It makes sense to search engines, and for developers going forward, they have a better understanding of where new things should go. And I think that's where, like on the development side, it gives you a roadmap as the site grows for how does it expand without getting out of control. I really that was really like one of the standouts for the whole conference for me. I thought she was a great presenter, and it's information that's as applicable to content writers, to designers, to site builders, and developers alike. It was really one of the most universal sessions I think that I saw.
Yeah,
So it's certainly worth our listeners to go and check out that session.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
With the link that we'll have in the show notes. Which
I would agree. I don't know if it was as I would agree. Go check it out. I don't know if it was the end all be all session for me for the conference, but it was definitely at the top of my list.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a top 5 for me.
So I have another question that I'm going to save to the end, but you can think about it is the best food. So maybe that would be the end all and be all. But so let's move to Jason. What is your first session that you'd like to recommend people check out? Why?
So there, probably the next one for me, because that was one of my top picks too, obviously. Yep. Battle for the Body Field with Jeff Eaton at the end of the second day was just awesome. So Eaton is, probably one of the better-known people in the Drupal world, but he's also
he's a Drupal icon to some degree, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he is, and the stuff that he's done has sort of morphed over the years, and he's become more and more interested in content strategy and content structure, more importantly, and how does it work? What does it all mean? How do you make it manageable for content editors as well as for consumption? So you often see him just as much speaking at content strategy conferences right. with people like Karen McGrain and Christina Halverson as you would in a Drupal conference. So this session was an end-of-the-day session in not that big a room. It was like 5 o'clock, tucked away in the back. It was filled and overflowing within minutes and went on for like an extra 45 minutes.
What does it mean, battle for the body field? What does that mean?
So he's talking about when you have a WYSIWYG editor, so like on any website, when you have a body field, how do you allow for all of the different kinds of content that might go in there and maintain a meaningful structure that doesn't compromise the editing experience or produce mountains of crappy markup? And so this is from the point of view of someone that has worked on major media sites for NBC, MSNBC, Martha Stewart. I mean, he's really worked on some of the largest sites you can imagine, and dealing with editorial workflows and trying to grapple with all of the things that might go in an article. So when you think about an article, like in an editorial sense, it's not just text. It's images. It might be tables. It might be video, quotes, all these different things that require different kinds of markup, and trying to come up with how do you break this into a structure that will be easy to edit, still allow for meaningful inclusions of that content without making it ridiculously difficult to edit and to create an edit. So what's the process that you go about for adding an image into text area, and what else has to go with that image. So, if it might not just be a photo, it could be a photo and a caption, it could be a photo, a caption, alignment information. Do you want stuff to wrap around it? Do you need to show a photo credit? Do you have to have licensing inclusions so that you can turn it off? I mean, that's another important thing. You can't just drop an image into the body field, and then if you're a magazine and you have licensing rights for that photo and you lose those licensing rights or they expire after time, you have to be able to turn it off. So there's a lot of complexity that goes into this kind of content. And so it wasn't necessarily about having a solution as it is really being thoughtful about considering all the implications so that we can look at it and look at the approach of the media module, or the asset module was another one that was brought up during that talk. And it was really pretty fantastic because there was like 45 minutes of other people contributing to this whole topic, and a lot of people with a really great broad base of experience. So I don't know how much of that ended up being recorded, but it was...
The video's an hour and 44 minutes.
Yeah, it was good.
It's interesting. The concept of the body field has always been a struggle in my company, in that sort of the body field is the field that by default is the essence of a page or the essence of the main content, but when you really go down to it, it's really not that at all, right? The body field is just the default field that someone has stuck in there as the default, and it's just a text field. There could be 5 body fields. It could be 5 text fields, and it's really sort of interesting on the focus of what does that mean in terms of a body field sometimes. And I always feel like the worst thing to ever do is to leave that thing ever called body, because that doesn't mean anything to anyone other than us Drupal guys who understand what the default content type is, and it says body, but to anybody else it means absolutely nothing.
Well, unless you're a writer, and then body copy makes sense.
Yeah, true. Right. Yeah, it's really interesting. I look forward to listening to that. And it really sounds like it was really more about the session was really more about embedded content, or main quote unquote body content for a page, right?
Yeah, that's really what it's focused on, because Drupal's awesome at modeling content. I mean, if you need to define a product, you can add all the fields you need to define that product in a really structured way. But if you're talking about an article in a magazine or for a newspaper, it's a very different thing, or a book. So if you're thinking about those kinds of things, because Drupal as publishing platform could just as easily be generating an ebook as it is something else. I mean, it's all HTML and CSS. But you have to be able to deal with all of these other kinds of structured content in and amongst the unstructured content. And how you get it there and how you manage it is a real challenge. I mean, everybody has a different answer for that.
It's really sounds interesting.
It was a time well spent.
It turned into, as somebody that came in simply for the Q&A after the session, the previous session was over. It was nails out, cat fighting there for a little bit. Very civilized, but you could see tensions were high.
It was funny because Jeff and Larry Garfield, or Krell on D.O and Twitter, have a long-standing discussion that goes along with this, and so there was a lot of that going back and forth in and amongst the other contributors. So it made for some really good discussion.
I've met Jeff once, and boy, he doesn't seem like a guy who's like would be at that point, the angst point of arguing.
No, Larry brings that.
Okay, all right.
But it was really good, and it's all coming from the background of having had to deal with this on a massive scale. Mm-hmm. So it's one thing to think about it in the context of our own projects that may or may not be a really large site, but I mean, I dealt with it on a publication magazine just a few months ago, and they've got 9,000 articles. So that's still an issue.
No, I don't think the size of the site matters with this topic at all. To be honest with you, I think you've got the same sort of issues regardless of the scale of the website. No,
if it's a small site, we just maybe mentally don't think about it with the same weight. But
yeah, right. True.
Or it had to do with more with the length of the post. That was the thing in that magazine site, is that they're very long. So the idea that we normally do, where we have like an image attachment and use the insert module to drop images in the body field, works really nicely. But when you have pages of content and lots of images to add, it starts to get more cumbersome because you're scrolling down to find the image and scrolling back up to drop it where you want it, and so it's not always so cut and dried.
And not to take this in a different direction, but I imagine there was some discussion about summary there somewhere.
Actually, no, not at all.
It wasn't? Okay, good.
No.
So I won't even bring that up now. We'll say that for another day, because we could probably do an entire show on that.
Oh, I'm sure we could.
Okay, so let's go on to John. I'm going to flip it back over to you. So what is the next session that you think is worth highlighting?
So the next session, fairly sure, was on day 2 of the conference, and that was actually the Digital Commerce Ecosystem was the title of it, and that was put on by 2 guys from the Commerce Guys. And they were essentially talking about software as a service and how to build an e-commerce platform where you could sell a service or software or something that wasn't necessarily a physical product. And this talk had, one of the things I like when going to a talk is how many new modules can they introduce me to that I have either heard of and never used, or that I haven't heard of at all. And this talk was jam-packed full of them. My notes, actually, looking over them right now, it's just one module after another. And some of those, I won't go through all of them because it's a pretty lengthy list, but they talked about the commerce license module and how that can be used, which I've had a little bit of experience with that, and it's pretty cool module. And to see them kind of talk about it and how it can be used is very, very cool. They also talked
John, are these modules that they're talking about all developed by them, or are they really contrib from the community related to commerce?
That is a great question. I would say a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B. They're all commerce modules, but I don't think they're all contributed by Commerce Guys. I could be wrong, but...
Well, I've used the license module before, and I actually don't think that was developed by them. Or maybe it was started but picked up by somebody else. So, I mean, I think it was a good blend.
Cool. So from there, they went on to talk about Commerce File and that being able to, giving you the ability to sell downloadable files and manage that. They talked about Card on File, which is a solution for not necessarily storing credit card information, but storing transactional data so that you can do reoccurring payments. They went on to talk about Commerce Funds, which is a method for you to give refunds or partial refunds back to people. And the talk just had a ton of module information, as well as giving practical uses for those modules. So
John,
I definitely recommend checking it out.
John, was there one aha moment for you that you heard something and said, "Oh my God, I had no idea I could do that with commerce"? Did you leave there with any of those?
I think the whole thing was really an aha moment. Like, I had heard of license and I had kind of used it, but they had talked about working with commerce license roles and doing subscriptions, and they kind of took that the knowledge that I had to the next level. It wasn't so much that it was like, oh my God, I didn't know you could do this really cool thing. But it was like, here are a couple other modules that you haven't heard about that could be really useful for things that you're trying to do. Like the Commerce Dunning module. What it does is it essentially manages payments. So it'll say, okay, has this user paid? No, it hasn't. Okay, try to process their credit card again in a day. Okay.
Yeah.
Did it process? No, it didn't. Okay, send them a notification saying that they can't process it. Okay, after a month, has this person paid? No, they haven't. Okay, suspend their account. So it manages those processes for you, so you don't have to always be on top of people for that sort of thing.
Well, that's cool.
John, I have one other question. Did
Sure.
they talk about Drupal 8 and commerce? That is a no.
They alluded. I'm going to give them that they alluded to it and to potentially having something ready. I don't know if all of these modules would be on the list to be ready.
Right. All right. So let's move on. Jason, one more from you, and then we'll move on to some additional items we have in our rundown here.
Well, there's
session.
a couple things that I want to talk about with regard to BOFs and Code Sprint. So I'm actually going to kick it back to John because I know there's another one that he's dying to talk about.
Oh man!
Talk about collaborative spaces because I know
Right.
I know Dave, and I'm really sorry I missed his session, but it sounds like you got a ton out of it. That was at the same time as Ken Woodworth's session, which was fantastic. I don't want to short out Ken here, but I think we got to throw it back to collaborative stuff because that was pretty cool.
So the title of this is Collaborative Spaces, Integrating Drupal with Google Drive, Dropbox, and More. And let me tell you, this was my favorite session of the whole conference. Dave Sawyer and James Barnett put on a great talk talking about integrating Drupal with Google Drive, Google Hangout, Gtalk, and Dropbox. And man, you want to talk about eye openers? You just asked me if there was anything that was like an eye opener for you, and I was sitting in this talk, and there was an instance where I was like, oh my God, I have a client that needs to use this like right now. This is absolutely amazing. This was another talk that was jam-packed full of modules to get you going and practical uses.
I can't wait anymore, John. I'm going to cut you off. What is the moment? What does this do?
Okay, so you really have to watch the video to see James's demo of it, but James works for Babson, and they're actually using a lot of the Google products, so Google Drive, Google Hangout, and Google Chat in their like intranet student faculty collaboration tool. So basically what this integration allows you to do is you can start a Hangout right from within this collaboration tool. So right from within Drupal, you can start a Hangout, and it'll pop up the Hangout window for you, connect you, do all that stuff. And you can also assign other people that you want to invite to the Hangout. So I click on their little widget within Drupal, and it says, who do you want to add? And I say, oh, add these 6 people, and then I send the invite, and it opens up the Hangout, invites the people come into the Hangout, we have a Hangout. Same thing with Google Drive. It allows you to create a file, manage who can see the file.
John, okay, I'm going to back you up here. I'm missing something.
Sure.
I can do what you just described in Google Hangouts. Why?
Because
What's the Google connection here? I'm missing.
So they have their classes and courses on organic groups.
Right.
So when you're on a class, you'll have a list of all the people that are in your class on the side, and you can click people in that particular class and start a Hangout. Or you can say, I need to do a spreadsheet with these 4 people in this class, and it looks contextual at which organic group you're in, and then it allows you to add them to class. And then it will go create the Word document, assign them permissions so that people can read, write, or just view it. And it really just integrates really well with their course scheduling.
Yeah, and beyond that, they're using Drupal as their intranet for their students and faculty. and it just integrates right into that system without them having to go to Google and open up Google Drive and open up Hangouts and take that extra step. It gives them an integration point right into, oh, I need to log into, XYZ system to check my class schedule or to check for an assignment. Yeah. Oh, I have a question about this assignment. Let me start a G chat with my professor. It gives them that one-stop shop to be able to access all of this information.
And because everybody's on Google Apps because you're in the school, everybody has it. It's not, you can use it personally, but you would have to have your users add their Gmail account. But he's presented bits and pieces at the Austin meetup a few times, and it's mind-blowing what it does.
It really is, and they're working on a distribution. They don't have a distribution yet, but I think they're working on that. But they're also the Drupal module is actually how they're doing a lot of this integration, and they're actually putting modules out to provide this functionality to the community.
So John, what is it about Dropbox?
So Dave's part of the presentation was to talk about integrating with Dropbox, and another aha moment here was Dave was actually giving real-life examples of how you could use Dropbox, and one of them was with backup and migrate. You can back up and migrate your site to Dropbox, and Dropbox can disseminate out that file to whoever it needs to go to. And that's currently a problem that we're trying to solve for. Where do we store these backups of our sites, and how are they accessible to people within the company? Another real-life example that he gave was a single place for file storage for your Drupal site. So you could actually have people upload images to Drupal and then have those images actually saved in a Dropbox somewhere. So there's a little bit of interaction there that could be useful for certain people in certain scenarios.
A backup and migrate seems pretty useful.
But what I think is really fascinating about what these guys are talking about is it fits in so firmly with stuff that Dries was talking about as a direction for Drupal 8, and also just the nature of the industry with the interoperability and interconnectedness of services, and the fact that even in D7 people are finding so many ways to use APIs and services and REST to be able to make Drupal a part of a larger thing is pretty fantastic. And it's amazing what you can connect it with for authentication, for shared content, for for syndication and publication and backup. I mean, there's just no end to it. It's awesome.
Yeah, Jason, you're definitely right. And I think one of the why this was such an eye opener for me was the first client that I thought about that I could use this with was actually trying to build kind of like a file repository for their organization, and most of the files in there were spreadsheets, Word documents, PDFs, all things that Google Drive does really well. Yeah. For them, I was like, oh my God, this is like a no-brainer. We can integrate it into Drupal. There's even a module that you can add that will give you a Save to Drive button for users. So if you log into the Drupal site and you see a file that you want to download, you can actually download that right to your Google Drive as opposed to downloading it to your computer. That sort of integration I thought was very cool and very interesting.
Yeah,
I'm going to switch gears here a little bit. Sorry, Jason.
That's okay.
None of the topics you brought up are Drupal 8 based, like the sessions that you guys are talking about.
Well,
I wanted to get your feelings briefly here on what was Drupal 8 about at this conference. Are there any specific Drupal 8? Because I know, Jason, when you came back from DrupalCon last year, you had a lot to say about 8.
Well, I have a lot to say now. A lot of it, for me, was my experience during code sprints. But
okay.
but
let's go there then.
Well, but there were a couple of sessions. So, I'm more of a designer than a developer. So
Right.
I went to several sessions about Twig, which is going to be the templating language that we use for theming in Drupal 8. And I also started playing around with creating a Drupal 8 theme. And I also went to a session on configuration management. I think it's not that probably half the sessions that I went were dedicated to Drupal 8. But the ones that were standing out were actually ones that were not, for me, were not tied to Drupal 8 or Drupal 7. They were more universal concepts, and they happened to be given by really fantastic presenters. So, I went to 2 sessions on Twig, and they were entertaining and informative. But I tend to hope for a lot more out of a presentation. And so that's why they weren't the ones that were at the top of my list.
Yeah, I have to agree with Jason. I think everybody talking about these kind of overarching topics did a good job of having a bullet somewhere that talked about Drupal 8 and how it applied and how it was still relevant, or how it was going to be relevant. I feel like a lot of the Drupal 8 talks, Drupal 8 specific talks that I sat in on, were very developer focused and very code focused, and not that they didn't hold my attention. I think they did hold my attention because I am doing a lot more development now, but I also felt like they weren't. It wasn't really something that I could bring back as something that we could use right this second. I think that the talks that were given were very informative and very interesting, but I was kind of looking for more of the, like, we can use this module right now, we can do this right now, this is how it best serves the client, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, the stuff with D8 was a little bit more long-reaching, but the involvement, I think, there is really can't be understated. So here's a little recap of stats, and then we'll talk about the code sprints. There were 3,443 people registered, which was awesome, from 60 different countries, which was amazing. There were at its peak 215 megabytes per second data transfer on the Wi-Fi, the 2 Wi-Fi networks they had there, with 37,000 simultaneous connections. So somehow 3,400 people managed to each be using roughly 10 different connections all day long. It was hilarious. So much for the one internet per person thing.
Hey, Jason, was Rhode Island considered a separate country, or is that considered part of the United States? Just curious.
It depends on who you ask. I think most people think it's an island off New York. So
exactly. Okay.
No, nobody said to me, "Oh, Rhode Island, that's part of Massachusetts, right?" So, I feel like.
Yeah.
Which is often I hear, "Oh, Rhode Island, oh, you're a Yankees fan." That's what I always hear.
Most of the conference, I was wearing my Red Sox hat, so everybody knew where my allegiances stood.
Sure.
But another important stat was over 800 gallons of coffee. So that was that's not counting the fact that there was a shortage of times during the day when they had the coffee carts out. So you probably could have doubled it if you factored in the Starbucks across the street. It had to be a banner week for them.
So 800 gallons of coffee and 6,000 gallons of beer?
I would not even want to make that estimation, because there were probably as many hours spent in bars as in the conference hall. So
here's a personal question. Did either of you guys feel like you had too much to drink on any of the nights there?
Yes, sir, I did.
You did. Okay.
I'm not gonna lie.
I did my best to try to control my alcohol intake, just simply because after the after parties I actually had to go back to my room and write a blog post. So
I saw some of his first drafts on that. I'm not sure you were successful, John.
Some of them needed a little more editing than others, but
So let's talk about the code sprints.
So code sprints like this, This is a tradition at many Drupal events, certainly at the DrupalCons. It's always on the day, generally on the day following the conference. And they've gotten more and more structured towards helping people begin to contribute. Now, typically, it's always been this kind of thing where you'll have a few dozen to a few hundred people scattered in a bunch of small rooms throughout the day, working on different issues, either for Drupal 8 or whatever the new version of Drupal is, or working on different modules and distributions. And a lot of people who maintain these things will sort of put the word out on Twitter and on Drupal.org that they're going to be sprinting on some number of issues or whatever. But what they've done recently is start to structure events during that day just to help people get involved. So even if you've never contributed to anything before, this is your chance. So they have a 3-hour workshop at the beginning of that day that was specifically for new people to get involved, get software installed on their computer that they need, make sure they're set up with an account on Drupal.org that has privileges to use Git, that they have the right repository checked out, and teach them how to look for things that are in their comfort zone. So there's tags applied to all these issues, and it might be on stuff that's existing on Drupal.org. It could be issues about Drupal 7. It could be issues about modules, or it could be D8. And there's stuff out there really for almost all levels, and it's more about making sure that you know how to look for things that you can work on. And there's documentation that needs to happen. There's testing that needs to happen. So even if you don't know how to code, they're really focused on helping people break through that barrier of like, I can be a contributor. I can do something to help Drupal be better. And so they had a room full. It was one of the large session rooms that was full of people in that first session. Had to be several hundred first-time contributors. And then there was another room next to it that was set up for mentoring these people. So once they're set up, then they could move into this next room and actually work in groups with a mentor. And the mentors were all identified with these, bright yellow DrupalCon T-shirts. And I actually didn't really quite feel like I was, schooled enough to be a mentor. So I just went in there to make sure that I had stuff set up, because I wanted to go down and work on some theming issues with Morton that was happening kind of down at the other end. And so I was sitting in there, and the mentor was helping me get things set up, and somebody else at the table was having a tough time, and she'd missed a couple steps. So I just asked her to come over and sit next to me, and I helped make sure she had Git running on her machine right, and helped her get Drupal 8 checked out so that she could get started. And it was a really good feeling to help somebody else along. To sort of be there, and we're kind of all in it together. So there's easily another couple hundred people in this room, and then once I had wrapped up with that and had gotten her up and running, Dan, the mentor at my table, was awesome. He actually went over and grabbed a T-shirt and gave me one, so I felt like I did my mentoring for the day. But then I spent the rest of the day in a room that had even more people in it that were the more experienced contributors. So all in all, there had to be 500 or 600 people at least that were there for code sprints during the day.
That's amazing.
And, yeah, all people dedicated to spending time to make Drupal better. And the amount of progress that gets made at these things. I found a tweet. They did actually close out all 14 beta blocking bugs by around noon on Friday.
That's crazy.
Wow.
They happened to open up like 15 more.
Yeah, of course. That will always happen, right?
But tremendous progress was made.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Very good.
So I got to spend the rest of the day working with John Albin, the creator of Zen, and Morton DK, and Danny Norden, and Kendall Totten from Media Current, and a bunch of other incredibly smart people working on how we might structure base themes in Drupal 8. And we made a ton of progress and came up with some really fantastic ideas and an action plan, and I'm really happy to say that I think that it looks very promising for Drupal 8 to ship with the best core responsive semantically clean markup that we've ever had. And
I think
I'm
that's
really
the case
excited
today
about it.
if no one did anything else. I mean, just the way it is right now is far better than it's been in the past. I
Yeah,
wanted to mention, we've mentioned Martin's name a few times today, as you guys were talking about the conference, and I just want to bring up, only because I recently listened to it, maybe in the last 2 weeks, there's an episode of Drupal Easy Podcast, episode 128, where Martin is on, and it's a really fantastic look into the Twig and what's going on in the theming side of Drupal.
yeah.
I'd encourage anyone who's interested in that side to really listen to that episode. It's probably an hour and a half,
Yeah,
but it's just fantastic content as usual from Mike over at Drupal Easy, and it's a good show, so you should really check it out.
yeah,
to
yeah.
learn
And,
more
those,
about that.
and I mean, Mike Anello and Ryan Price are awesome. I mean, really, really great guys. Huge contributors to the community. But yeah, I really would like to dedicate one of our shows soon to Twig, because I learned some stuff that was. I mean, I've known about Twig and I've worked on it for a year and a half, off and on. But some of the things about this switch to Twig are going to be total game changers in what we do with the front end of Drupal. It's incredibly powerful.
And I was thinking, and I passed the episode on to Tim and my company and said, listen to this, because it feels like, and I really know very little about Twig in the grand scheme of things, but it sounds like it's perfect for someone like Tim, who's really a front-end guy,
Yeah.
who knows a lot of Drupal, but is really focused on the front-end side of things.
Yep.
And Twig seems like the answer to all of our ever needs, and we haven't dug into it enough yet to know that.
Yeah,
sure.
no, it's going to be very different. And one thing, the syntax is pretty simple. So you can do a lot of things with a lot less code, and it's a lot more transparent. I mean, render arrays in PHP in the current theming system just make me cry every time.
Sure.
It's awful. And the problem is it's pre-rendering tons of HTML and markup into what comes out of it, and Twig doesn't do that. Twig preserves the data till much later in the page render process, so you're able to manipulate the raw content a lot more easily to get at only the pieces that you want without having to dig back into what's already been turned into HTML and strip stuff out.
Well, based on what the stuff that I've learned recently, it kind of feels like some of the other tools that are out there that you can use to generate pages that the front end developer can totally control the HTML. Based on what I know about modules, I'm finding it hard to believe that, but it seems like we're getting a lot closer to that world.
It's getting much closer, and actually there was a session about having a themeless Drupal front end, and the theme was basically AngularJS and manipulating JSON. I mean, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think we could probably have a show on that coming up pretty soon here as well.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I wanted. I wanted to get across with the sprints that. It was for everyone. I mean, it was the best possible mistake in my own flight scheduling to end up there for pretty much the whole day, and it was such an awesome reminder of how big the community is, but how close everyone is. And that was really one of the best things for me this week was, I mean, I had a great time introducing John to lots of people, and kind of helping to kind of introduce him to a larger Drupal community of people that we don't get to see every day. But seeing friends that I only see when I go to DrupalCon, from all over the world, who are there every time. It's really great.
All right, so let's look at wrapping up today's show. We are slightly over an hour, or maybe more than slightly over an hour, but no problem with that. So, John, Jason, any final words that you would like to say about your experience at DrupalCon?
Yeah, one thing I did want to add is as a first timer, I think that my focus on going to sessions wholly was not the best approach to take. I did end up in my last day going to 2 BOFs, and those BOFs were actually one was PCI compliance with our friend Rick Manelius, which was awesome. It got a lot of people in the same room talking about the topic, and there were a lot of interesting points of view. And the other one was just a podcasters BOF that was with Chris Weber, who's also been on the show. And going to those 2, BOFs was very, very interesting, and it was a really good change of pace. So anybody that's going to DrupalCon next year for the first time, I would recommend keeping an eye on the BOF schedule and trying to mix it up a little bit. Don't just go all session all the time.
Yeah, you really can't. And just to clarify, BOF is birds of a feather, or in Austin, bats of a feather. And that's kind of the extra track that's going on at the conference. So there's usually a whole other set of rooms. In this case, I think there had to be like, I don't know, 8 or 9 different rooms that they had these small gatherings, and so people could sign up and say, I want to have a BOF session on some particular topic, like podcasting or PCI or something else. And so it doesn't have a selection process. People just sign up and you show up if you want to, but they're not recorded. So that's one of the things about making sure if there's no session that really grabs your attention, go check out the BOF schedule, because that's a one-shot deal. Like you don't get to go back and revisit those, but they do record every single main conference session, which is
Would
awesome.
you call a BOF an IRC, like face-to-face?
Yeah, kinda. I mean, it's just sort of a hangout, I mean, I've been to a bunch of them in the past centered around education, open badging, Drupal in higher ed or Drupal in K through 12, and so it's this sort of like special interest discussion. Mm-hmm. And I think I would be remiss in not saying I think they really screwed up this year by allowing people to sign up for BOFs online before they went to the conference. And so in 4 hours, weeks in advance of the conference, all the slots were filled up. And so you ended up with people using it as a surrogate for giving a session, which was a real bummer, because the value in the BOFs is that impromptu get-together of people who happen to like a certain topic and are all in this same vicinity.
Yeah,
and
it removes the community feel of what a BOF is.
Yeah. So, I mean, I like the fact that you can sign up online versus having to go down and write something on a whiteboard, but don't open it up until people are on the premises. I think. Yeah,
but even in a BOF, do you really need to sign up at all? That's.
Well, no. To sign up further to get the room. There's a finite number of rooms.
Right.
So to say like I want to have a BOF on, using Drupal in meetups or starting a meetup. Like there's a perfect topic. I mean that's the kind of thing that we need to have there, and a lot of those things were cut off.
Well, speaking of meetups, we have a meetup tonight in Providence, which is the Providence PVD, or the Drupal PVD meetup that happens once a month. And tonight is the meetup in Providence, and anyone listening to this probably can't attend, won't attend because it will be over, but it's an opportunity locally to connect with local Drupal people. So if you don't have a meetup near you, you should think about starting one up. It's pretty easy to do. And John, what's happening tonight at the Providence PVD meetup?
If you happen to attend, you'll actually hear a lot more of this podcast.
Exactly.
We'll be talking about a lot of the same things we covered here, our favorite stuff from DrupalCon. The only benefit is that you'll hear a little bit more because we'll talk about it in more detail, but you'll also be able to ask questions. So if there's anything...
Also, and I think there'll be a few other people there that have attended, so I think we'll be able to get some other people's feelings about it too. Other people's standout things. So, so it should be good. And there's a few sessions on our list that we couldn't get to today that I really want to talk about tonight that were kind of standouts for me. So, should be a lot of fun.
That's good. So also as we exit the show out today, let's talk about a few of the things that are coming up. So one of the things is Jason's book is available online right now, and you can find it at, Jason, remind me of the link. It is
responsivetypographybook.com, and that links over to O'Reilly, and you can also sign up for the newsletter list there too.
Right. So that book is in its, what would you call that? Is it past beta?
Well, it's still called an early release.
Okay.
So you can buy it as an ebook. It's a couple dollars less than it'll be once it comes out fully. I'm working through edits now. I've got tech reviews back from Aaron Gustafson and Jen Robbins, who were just amazingly generous in their time, and so every time I post these edits up, every couple weeks they push out a new edition of the ebook, so you can just download the edited version whenever you want, and you get notified and stuff. It's a pretty cool program, so it lets me get stuff out there and start to get feedback too. I had some fantastic feedback because I gave a talk about typography at DrupalCon on Tuesday, and it went really well, and I got tons of great feedback, and all of that stuff feeds back into the book. So it's pretty cool. I've been pretty excited about how it's been received so far.
I never realized how hard it was to spell responsive in typography until I typed that URL.
Well, I also you can go straight to the O'Reilly site by going to a bit.ly link, bit.ly/rwtbook. So that takes you straight to the O'Reilly site.
It's way easier.
I've also noticed that if you do a Google search on Jason's book, it comes right up. So
just Jason's book?
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. So good luck with that if you're looking for Jason's book. So we also have let's promote a few conferences coming up in the area for us, because we're in the Northeast here. We have Design for Drupal. That is in August.
Yes, we have. We've got Design for Drupal coming up in the first weekend in August.
Right.
And I think we're going to have some pretty cool stuff going on there. I'm the content chair, and I talked to lots of people at DrupalCon about speaking, and I think we're going to have some folks from Chapter 3 and Atten and Four Kitchens coming. So we'll have some great speakers there and great sessions, and it's going to be wholly focused on design and front end. So it's really one of the only Drupal events that you can go to that really just focuses on that aspect of it, not on site building or modules or back-end developer operations and stuff like that.
So Jason, for a conference like Design for Drupal, it's a conference that someone who's familiar with Drupal but is also on the design side. This is not a duplicate of a camp. It's not a duplicate of a DrupalCon. It's something that's unique, right?
Yeah, so there's really only maybe 3 events like it. There's one that they put on in LA. There's this one that's been going on for a number of years, and then there's one over in Europe called Front End United, and those are really the only ones that are focused purely on user experience design, interaction design, anything that you could label as design in part of that process, and then the other track is in front end development and theming. So from basically the theme layer up. And I try and really we're trying really structuring it like a good web design conference that happens to be tied to Drupal.
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of the people that we're trying to get to speak there and stuff, it's actually some people that are maybe a little bit outside the norm for a Drupal conference, which I think will make it ultimately a lot more valuable for people going there to make sure
are there
that...
opportunities for our listeners to speak at a conference like this?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I mean, we have 4 rooms and sessions all day long. So the session submission is open now, and it should be a great event. It has been all the times that I've been. So I've really enjoyed it.
Great. And for anyone who is interested who couldn't attend DrupalCon and is in the New England area, we have the New England Drupal Camp on November 1st, which is the first year event.
Yay!
And it is being coordinated by pretty much everyone on this phone call, or someone within the family of everyone on this phone call. So I say that in jest because Jason's not directly involved, but his wife Ellen is a key contributor to making this conference happen. So we're putting together a Drupal camp that's called New England Drupal Camp, and it's based in the New England area. It's on November 1st, so it's outside of any of the things you would go to regarding Drupal in New England at that time of year, and it's at Brown University. So check out newdcamp.com, and that's NEWDcamp.com if you want more information. The session submission will be up shortly, and when I say shortly, I mean within days or hours, and you can submit proposals, and we've gotten a lot of great support already for this conference. So
we got some great sponsors and lots of people asking about it when we were in Austin.
Yeah, great sponsors. It's a one-day event, so if you're in the ideas, if you're in the New England area, there's no sort of traveling overnight. You're going to come in for one day and really get some great content.
Bit of an Easter egg. Session submissions are actually up if you know the secret URL.
But we're not going to give that out, right, Nick?
No, but if you happen to if you're a good Drupalist, you should be able to figure it out.
Okay.
If you do, I won't guarantee that you'll get a talk, but you'll get a couple points in my book.
And we've had a few submissions via the Contact Us page, by the way, as well. So,
yep.
So anyway, so we got people excited about that. So check it out, and this officially could be our longest show ever. So Jason,
about an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's all right. Jason, tell us very quickly where people can find you online.
You can find me at jpomentel pretty much anywhere. If you want to see work, you can go to hwdesignco.com. If you want to buy a book, you go to bit.ly/rwtbook. And if you want to see me in person, go to Future Insights Live in Las Vegas next week.
Okay, if you want to buy a book half price, email Stephen Cross at stephen@parallax.com.
Actually, well, that reminds me, I have some coupons, so if people really want to get a hold of this book, then they should, and they're listening to this show, they got to get in touch, and I'll hook you up.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Jason. John, how about you?
You can find me on all the social networks at John Picozzi. You can find me always on at oomphinc.com. You can find me writing at oomphinc.com/blog. And you can find me next year at DrupalCon LA.
There you go. Someone's already decided to go there. And we need to thank Jason, John's company, Oomph, for sponsoring New England Drupal Camp. They're the event sponsor, and we should not forget their contributions to this effort we're putting on. And Nick?
How you doing? You can find me at Nick's Fan and probably on the nightly news today trying to get as close to the presidential motorcade as possible.
Local Drupal enthusiast accosts the president tonight at 12.
Trying to convince him to let me redo the whitehouse.gov.
Oh, actually, I missed it. You know, there were some great sessions from that, too, about the White House site.
Really?
Yeah, there was some really cool stuff and a ton of stuff being contributed back to the community.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's good to hear. And I'm Stephen Cross. You can find me at steven@parallaxmail.com for email, and you can look me up on Twitter at Stephen Cross with a PH. I think that's it, guys, right?
Yeah, I think so.
It's a good show. It was great to talk with you guys again, and actually going to see, who am I going to see tonight? Nick, are you coming down from Boston? No, he's shaking his head no.
Probably not.
Right.
No, he's getting arrested by the Secret Service. He's not going to be able
That's
to come
right.
across.
My entire, they're pretty much surrounding us. One route is on one side of me, and the alternate route's on the other side of me, so
No problem.
Worcester's
No
in
problem.
lockdown.
How about Jason? Going to see you tonight?
Oh, I'll be there.
All right. And
Yeah,
I know
hope he
John
is.
will be there, so catch you guys later.
See you guys.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Next week.
Insert outro music here.